Okay, so Project Management 201, we didn't know what we were going to talk about, but at Project Management 101, we asked the question, and a young lady in the back row said, I want to know how to use these things. So that's what this is going to be about. We're going to take everything we talked about last time and show you some tools and say, hey, this is how to use it. So 201, what we did in 101 was basically say, this is how Jumpstart works. And these are some ways that you can enhance what you've learned on Jumpstart, so it's project management. I've been doing project management a long time for many, many different fields. I have not done project management for what you're doing. So I have the utmost respect for you, and I have done my best to give you some samples, which you'll see in a bit, that take into account everything that you are learning in your 7 jump steps. So just for a recap, I believe Derek has sent to all of you, and it will be made available to you, the slide presentation for 101. So I'm just going to go through a couple of things. One is, what is project management and why should I care? And actually, when I was looking through the Jumpstart materials, I saw a lot of the words that I was using in the first presentation were there in Jumpstart. You need to be organized. You need to be respectful of other people's time. You need to be communicative. All of those things are things that Jumpstart is always teaching you. And in fact, if you do a little bit of project management, as I say here, it's going to save you time, money, and aggravation. And all of those things are really critical to having a successful small project like you do. The most important part of project management is you already know how to do a lot of it. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, you guys already have families, you have businesses, you've done church socials. All of that are projects that you have managed. It's a matter of getting something done with the time and resources that you have available. And project management doesn't cost anything to do. You are in charge of how you want to do your project. And if you do it better, then your project goes better. It just seems to be a complete no-brainer. And a big part of my presentation a couple weeks ago was communication, communication, communication. If you communicate well, and if you're intentional and deliberate about what you do, everybody is going to love working with you. And of course, as you know from life, that makes things a whole lot easier. Essentially, this visual is one that pretty much encapsulates it. People sometimes go into projects and they don't have a method for getting to A to Z. So they don't even get to Z. They might get to C, and they have roadblocks along the way. So basically, some of the tools that I'm going to show you and some of the principles are going to help you have a more intentional, a more deliberate, and a more predictable way to get from the start of your project to the end of your project, and maybe actually enjoy doing it. So what's in a basic project management plan? As you see, the core of what we're going to talk about are your 7 jump steps. I'm not going to repeat what they are. Some of you have already been through Jumpstart, and if you haven't, then the Jumpstart materials are online. But in addition to the jump steps, I'm going to talk about things. Actually, I've incorporated these into a few documents that you're going to get that talks about project scope, stakeholder, risk, communication, and the project timeline, which is really your schedule. And the schedule that you've talked about to date in Jumpstart usually is your construction schedule and your construction scope. But I'm asking you to think a little more broadly about all the steps that it takes to get your project done, not just the construction. And I'm going to show you examples of that. And then at the end, I'm introducing you to something called closeout, which is basically nailing everything down, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, making sure your exit strategy is one where there's no loose ends, everyone gets paid, and also you take the time to think about lessons learned. So these are some of the things we covered in 101. The bottom line is your project management plan has to make sense for you. One size does not fit all. There's a lot of tools. A few weeks ago, someone was asking me about software, and software is not the same as thinking through a project. You're the one that has to list all of the activities. You're the one that has to understand what the risks are. You are the one that has to communicate with your team, and you are the one that's going to have to pick the right tools that work for you. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How you pick those tools, what they can do for you, and how you're going to integrate it with the 7 steps of Jumpstart. So how do I create and use the tools? So these are 3 points that I want to make. The first one is do an honest assessment of your comfort level. Some people, they still want to use pencil and paper, and that's fine. But do you have your devices? Do you comfortable using them? All of these things that I have here, how are you using your devices? How do you use them every day? What kind of resources do you have in terms of devices? In terms of technology, are you tech savvy or are you not? Or are you smart enough to know that you don't know anything, but you might have a teenager in your house who does? And then the third thing is, whether you love it or hate it, you're going to have some paper while you're doing this project. So if you're going to end up with paper, even though everything is digital, make sure you have a scanner, because otherwise it's not going to be useful for you if you're trying to compile everything in your digital cloud. So this assessment, this is something very, very easy for you to do. Devices, tech, and your relationship with paper. That will give you an assessment of what you should be using. And therefore, you need to match your tools with your skill level. So once you've understood your skill level, then there's lots of places where you can find tools. Googling it is the easiest way because, of course, there's lots of free templates online. Jumpstart has some tools that perhaps other Jumpstarters have used. And I'm also going to encourage you that after we go through the session today, you think about what works for you, and you might be creating your own tool. And in fact, I'm going to show you an Excel spreadsheet that you can adapt to any way that works for you. So first thing is do an honest assessment of your skills. The second is match the tools to the skill level. And here are some examples, for example, that a napkin, which we showed last time, that's somebody who is scheduling out how to get to the moon, and they're doing it on the back of a napkin. Or on the right-hand side of your screen is Microsoft Project, which we'll show you later. And then the example of, are you going to be using your device? Which devices? Are you going to be using phone, tablet? These are all things you need to consider when you're picking the right tool. And then finally, the point that I made earlier is your tools are not doing the management. All the tools are doing is organizing information so that you can use it in a certain way. So think about, for each of the tools, or for the software, or for your pen and pencil, how are you using it? Because you might use different tools for different purposes. And that's kind of why I wanted to make sure to list all of these. So you just think about it. I can't tell you what to use or what to do because your skills are going to be different. And also you may feel, I can do all the communication myself, but I do need it for tracking. I don't need to worry about documentation, but somebody else might really want to do documentation. So there's different things that you can use, and I'm going to show you 3 different ways to set your tools up. The other thing to consider, how will you use it? Do you have people that are going to be working with you on your team? Do you need to share with a contractor? Are you going to have everybody working in the cloud? Are you going to be printing things out? Do you need to update something all the time? Do you have somebody on your team who's really, really crucial to you, but you both are using different platforms? As I mentioned a few weeks ago, don't try and FaceTime somebody with Android. It ain't going to work. So make sure you understand all of that. It's kind of related to our communication plan that we talked about last time too. And one great thing about a lot of these platforms, especially online, they'll give you a trial period. And even if it's something you make up, try it out before you completely put everything in your entire project on one platform. Make sure that it works for you, because if you have to change courses halfway or 3/4 of the way through your project, there's a risk of losing information, and worse, it's going to slow you down and you won't be able to have a history of your project. And we'll talk about that later on one of the scheduled spreadsheets. So this was what the young woman asked for. What does this stuff look like? So in this section, I'm going to go through slides, and you're going to see snapshots of all the tools that I made up for you. And then when we get to the end of the 4 sets of slides, we're going to go through the documents first, and then we're going to go to the schedules, because I'm going to take you live through an MS project worksheet and also through an Excel worksheet. So templates, which we're going to talk about now. And again, I'm going to emphasize, if there's one thing you remember from this session, is your tools don't manage, you do. It's a matter of how you use them and which ones work for you. So I'm going to be giving you basic templates, very, very simple formats. The only thing that's a little exotic is going to be the Microsoft project, which you need to have software loaded up in order to use a spreadsheet. But most of these templates are very simple, and you can go through Google, you can go through project management websites and get all sorts of templates that basically have the same principles. They might look different. They might be charts, they might be downloads, they might be apps. So again, I just want to introduce you to the principles and the content, and then you can figure out what template works for you. Also, we're giving you most of these things in document format so that you can adapt them. Basically, you can change the format, do anything you want. So I'm trying to give you some useful things to start out and basically play with, and you see what works and what doesn't. All right, what's in a basic plan? Some of this terminology will be familiar from last time in the intro. Since your projects are small projects, we're only doing either a gut renovation or a rehab, let's keep it simple. Larger projects might have thousands and thousands of lines of activities. We're starting out with something that's pretty small and manageable and basically bespoke. We're going to make it exactly the way you need it for your project. And we're going to go through 4 documents today. Project plan, which has short sections of key information. And again, it's going to be tailored to what you want. A project directory, the project schedule, which I'll do at the end, and then the closeout document. So we're going to go through these on the screen. So I show you what they look like, and then we're actually going to use them. So the first one's a project plan. I did a dummy for you, and I did a dummy of 8 sections. We're going to go through each one of them separately. This is nothing but a Microsoft Word document. All of the red that you see are going to be hints and instructions for you. And I filled in some things just to give you an idea of what the content will be. We're going to do this live in a few minutes. The project plan has all of your project, not just the construction. These are short sections that should be updated as needed. If you want to get really, really fancy and you really get into project management, I know some of you a few weeks ago said you're project managers. Some of the sections can actually be standalone documents if you really, really want to go into detail, like the risk plan or the communication plan. But what I've showed you here is a very simple 3-page document. The more you put in, it might be 4 pages, but it's just a Microsoft Word document. Very, very simple. The second element is your project directory. Again, the instructions are in red, and this is where you put down your team member information, stakeholders, contractors, agencies and services, and there might be other people. Maybe there's some community organizations that aren't stakeholders. I just put an other section just so that you would know it. Again, this is your entire team, everybody that's touching the project, not just the construction team. And I'm suggesting that you have the roles and the contact information as the very, very basic. Using a spreadsheet would be the step up, because a spreadsheet is going to give you the ability to have a lot more information for each person. And trust me, as you go through the project, the last thing you want to do is be fumbling in your phone and saying, oh, I don't remember the name of that plumber or that contractor. But if you have it on a spreadsheet and it's digital, you just basically search for the keyword and you've got it right away. You'll save time, and also you'll seem really, really organized. This format that I'm giving you is just a Word doc, but as I mentioned, a spreadsheet is best. So if you have the ability to work in Excel, doing a spreadsheet or a Google Sheet is really the best way to do it, because it's so compatible with your mobile devices and you'd have it just at your fingertips. Also, in terms of the update, this is one you're going to be updating constantly. So whatever template you use, make sure it's easy for you to edit on the fly, not while you're driving, but on the fly. The third thing is the project schedule. We're going to do this last because I'm going to go through these live with you. The small one is an Excel spreadsheet. The large one is a roll-up of the Microsoft project spreadsheet. And actually what I did is everything on the Excel spreadsheet is information that's on the Microsoft one. So those of you who don't have MS Project, you will be getting the exact same information on the Excel spreadsheet, and I'll show you how to use it. And I'll also explain what the upsides and the downsides are to using both of them, if that's really kind of important. Again, on the schedule, it's your entire project. It's going to have all of the 7 jump steps in there. We'll go through that step by step. Basically, it's a bar on a spreadsheet, which is the Excel with the major activities. And remembering that moonshot on a napkin, you could even use pencil on graph paper. As long as you get all of your activities down and you have the ability to add to it and to make changes, because your schedule is always going to be changing and slipping, whatever works for you. The step up is going to be some kind of project management software, again, that automatically creates and changes the bars, the dependencies, and I'm going to show you how that works in Microsoft Project. There are many, many examples of software that's not as detailed as MS Project. That's software that I have had on my computer for ages, but that's for resourcing, and it's for many thousands of lines, and it's really not something that you particularly need. There's many more simple ones. So again, format a simple Excel spreadsheet. It'll be less than 100 lines. The ones that I've done for you is about 60 some odd lines, or project management software, which I think you might want to try out if you have the ability. Excuse me. The last item that we're going to look at is a closeout document. This is something that's going to be completely new to a lot of you, just in concept. And just like with all these other items that I'm showing you, even if you don't use any of these, take a look at them, think about them, and just think about the principles behind it. In this case, I made 4 different sections for you: finalizing project completion, archiving, team performance, and lessons learned. And we're going to go through that in a couple of minutes, each of the sections, and I'll show you the examples. It's nothing but a checklist of activities, but it should be comprehensive. And this is a way for you to not have to remember all the things you need to finish a job. By the time you get to the end and you have to think about the permits, the loans, the loose ends, the punch list items, what do you have that piece of paper? Where is it? Do you have that final document? What did you do with it? Your project's needs are going to vary. Some people might have much more complexity than others, but having knowledge of where all your documents are, how to access them, and making sure your project's closed out properly is part of being a good developer. And in this case, it's always going to probably be a simple doc. You, of course, could put everything in a spreadsheet, but I'm keeping it simple, and it's just a couple of pages to give you an idea of some of the questions that are going to be asked. And of course, this is something that you do at the end of the project, finishing it. But during the project, you can actually list some of the items that you are going to need for closeout. So, Derek, this is a time that I'm going to stop sharing. There you go. And now it's up to you.
How's that? All right.
There you go. Project plan. Perfect.
Cool.
So we're going to go through all of those 3 documents on Derek's desktop. So the project plan is basically the summary of everything you're going to do and trying to anticipate in the pre-development stage what's going on. So number 1, the brief description. I was describing this as your elevator speech. If you run into somebody on the street, if you're in an elevator with someone who's interested in your project, what are you going to tell them about your project? And it should be conversational, and it should be to the point, and it should be personal. A couple of sentences that describes what you're doing. And it needs to be as comfortable and as easy as you can make it. Writing it down for the first time, it might kind of give you an idea of, oh, right, I shouldn't be saying that. I should be probably saying this. So I gave you a little example of just a conversational evaluation of, or conversational illustration of what a description might be. The project scope is something different. That outlines what's in your project. And this can be pretty expansive. It can go 3-4 paragraphs, whatever it is, whatever is needed to get across the distinctive things about your project. For example, you know, in this example, it was, you have prior experience, when you want to have it ready. You might have some of the challenges in here. Just put in writing your project scope. And you will find this very useful, for example, when you have to send an email to a contractor about what the project generally is before they even come and take a look at the plans for a bid. It's like, what the heck is this project? Well, instead of saying, well, it's a house on Derrick Street, it's going to be, okay, these are the 2 paragraphs. It gives them a little bit information about it, and they will have more confidence that you know what you're doing. So project scope. Next is team members. Team members are different than stakeholders. Team members are the people that, these are the guys that are going to keep you out of trouble. These are the people that are helping you get the project done. These are the people that all your 7 jump steps have been about, which is, these are the people that are going to get you to the finish line. And I'm just suggesting that you really be comprehensive about thinking about who is on your team. People don't think about an accountant or attorney. You know, they might think about the lender or the contractor, but your accountant and your attorney may end up being pretty important, keeping you out of trouble. So consider them part of your team. Next is your stakeholders. These are people that have an interest in the project, not a financial interest in the project. Those are your team members or your contractors. These stakeholders, I gave you an example here, and the important thing is these may be people who have an interest either positively or negatively. I mean, there might be a real troublemaking neighbor that you have to look out for. Make sure you're aware that the guy is a key stakeholder. The risk chart is the one that people had a lot of questions about when we talked a few weeks ago. Derek, if you want to scroll down. So I'm suggesting here that even if you don't use this, to think about risk. And these can be thought of maybe as challenges, but they could also be risk. And again, every project is going to be different. And the examples I gave here would be, what's the likelihood of something really bad happening? And I gave some examples of some stuff. What would be the impact if it does happen? Like you can have medium likelihood, but high impact, you know, low likelihood, high impact. And then to give some thought to what would be your response action? In other words, how can I think about mitigating it or avoiding it? Avoiding risk and avoiding surprises is the biggest superpower, I think, that a developer has. A good developer will always think about risk and mitigation. Milestones and deliverables, this will come from your schedule, and we can talk about that a little bit later. I'm encouraging you to think about this in the first document because you might have, you know, Aunt Mary's birthday in 2025 as the day that she's going to be moving into your house. That's got to be put down as one of the major milestones, even though you're going to be working back from it. So again, this is going to vary with your project. Communication plan is one that I suggested that at some point, if you really want to step it up, you could even make this a whole major thing. But thinking about how you communicate with people, how often, and what the likelihood is that they're going to understand you is really important. I gave the example of I'm Android and people with iPhones are always trying to FaceTime me. It doesn't work. So by checking in also with your contractor, how often does he want to talk to you? How often do you want to talk to them? Think about it as a way to make your communication and your project more seamless. And just think about the trouble you have had, even in the past month, probably. You can't reach somebody. Well, why can't you reach them? There's always a way to figure it out in the beginning. And then I also put in a section, your own specialized plan here. And that's because since every project is different, and you wouldn't be doing Jumpstart if you weren't taking risks and a problem solver, there might be something that an area that isn't in one of those 1 to 7 that you want to think about up front in your project. Whatever it is, this is your opportunity in the project plan to scope your entire project, what you want to do in the global sense up front. Next, we're going to take a look at project directory, which is very simple. This basically, as I said, easiest to do it in a spreadsheet, but whatever works for you, make sure that you get everybody you're dealing with, everybody you need to communicate with in one place. I'm suggesting this because too many people rely on the contacts in their phone. And if you have 15 Peters and you can't remember the last name, and then you have one guy you talk to at an agency for a permit, and then somebody else is on the line and you can't remember the name of the person you talked to before, you're holding up your project. This is an opportunity for you to really, really, really get organized. So figure out what works for you, whether it's a document, whether it's a spreadsheet, whether it's a contact app, whatever it is, use it. And apps are really good for stuff like this, the contact apps. So that's Project Directory. The point is, use something. We're going to jump to Project Closeout, and I'm going to do the schedule next. Project Closeout, as I mentioned earlier, you won't have thought about this. I just want you to think about it. So whether you end up filling out these forms or not, the point is, think about it. Finalize project completion. I broke this down, if you can scroll down, Derek, into construction, financial, acquisition, and then leasing. And you can pick any other categories you want, but the point is, you're going to have these documents. You're going to have a heck of a lot of paper. These are just examples, and you need to remember where they are, because you're not going to be the only one that's going to need to access them. And you need to know where the originals are, not just copies. So this is a real serious thing, actually, documentation.
I will chime in as a lender. I will say we would appreciate that. Having those documents all ready to go, it helps you pay off your loan faster, right?
There you go. Archiving is simply where all the things are and what's going to be in them. So all the things we listed in section 1, these are going to be all the locations, what types of documents are there. Authorized access, really important, because you're on vacation or you're going off to a funeral, who is going to be able to get into those materials to help out when Derek said, hey, I need this, and you're not there. Mm-hmm. The next section, team performance. At the end of the job, you might decide you don't want to do this anymore, and this is going to be your last project. But chances are you are going to want to do another one, and you're going to become a Jumpstart junkie. And if that's the case, it's really good to evaluate the good and the bad, and how did people do? You know, I'm from New York, and Ed Koch used to say, how am I doing? So this is a case where you can evaluate your team members and say, do I want to work with them or not? What were the problems? What are the things that I could do better? And that actually goes in the last section. Scroll down, Derek, into lessons learned. This is really, really critical, because you'll not just learn things about your team and how the job was run, you'll learn a lot about yourself and how you can improve working with others, working with your contractors, all the things, like, for example, I have it in what went right and what could have been better and what the lessons are learned. You could have other things, but these are pretty basic. And I would really strongly recommend that you take the time to do this.
Great.
Now we're going to do fun stuff.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody again, we're going to be sending these out, and they'll be in your inbox tomorrow. So no need to worry or take any vicious notes. We'll get them to you very soon.
And they're all in doc form, so you can easily tailor them. All right, now we're going to go through the sexy stuff for a few minutes. This is Microsoft project. And all of this looks pretty simple, doesn't it? But basically, this is what it really looks like. I've rolled it up so that you could see I was looking at milestones, pre-development, and you'll see jump step 1, jump step 2, jump step 3, financing, jump step 4, construction, jump step 6, permit and inspections, and lease manage sell, jump step 7. This is only 84 lines and very, very brief. But what I wanted to show you is that if you can find a software that works for you, It gives you tremendous flexibility and it does so much automatically for you, including a really, really important thing, which is this column called predecessors. In what you're doing, there's certain things that need to happen before others. We were talking a few weeks ago about you're not going to put a roof on before the walls and the studs are up, right? So the same thing in Jumpstart and the same thing in a project. Like, for example, agreement of sale, you can't have an agreement of sale unless you finish sourcing the property. So if I take this out, you see a line goes away. If I put this in, the line comes back. So it's very, very easy to customize and to make changes in a project that is loaded up onto software similar to this. You do not need something as complicated as MS Project. I'm giving you the very, very simplistic view here. And what I've done also is I have color coded it, which I strongly recommend that no matter what you use, that you color code your different sections of work. Now, just to give you an example, you see all of these tasks and activities. I have taken a copy of this entire list, and this entire list is also here. This is an Excel spreadsheet with exactly the same information as we were looking at with the MS Project sheet, exactly the same. So the only thing that is different is that this duration, this is done automatically by software. So if we take this out and hide this column, this is exactly the same list of activities and the same colored bar charts as you had in Microsoft Project. Using an Excel spreadsheet or anything else that's not automatic software, however, if I change this date, it wouldn't automatically change the bar. So if you decide that your skill level is best suited for a spreadsheet, this is a shape insert, for example, that can be moved every time that this can move when your project moves. So for example, I want to change my financing. So I'm going to insert a bar here. And this is going to be my new bar for moving my schedule in my financing. I would change the dates and then I would move the bar. So Microsoft Project or any other software is much more specific, but you can do a lot of the same things. Like say you want to know where you are July 1st, you just move it. You can just absolutely tailor anything. It's just a little more rudimentary, but it works. And I have to tell you, I've been using Excel spreadsheets because they're easy for other people to use and other people to understand, and they don't need to load fancy software. So this is an example that in fact, you can do a heck of a lot just with a simple Excel spreadsheet and still have the same result. For example, you're going to add, you got insulation, drywall. I don't know, let's add a 7A in here. You're going to insert another trim that's going to be 6A. You're going to have special woodwork. And you can move it over, same as, and you just add dates, and you would just maybe copy another, add in another color, just like you have. The only project problem using an Excel spreadsheet, of course, is This establishes your baseline, and in order for it to change, you either have to use the movable bars or you have to go back and change everything. So if you're going to be making a lot of changes in your schedule, which you probably are, I strongly recommend that you find a software that automatically changes the bars and loads up your schedule so that you don't have to do it all manually. If you don't feel comfortable with that, I'm giving you this, and you'll have a copy of this when Derek sends it out to show you that you actually can do it. Okay, let's go back to finishing up. All right, so we've gone through all 4. And now we're going to talk about what's most important before we end for questions. What's most important is match your tools to your skill level and use what works for you. When somebody said, well, I've got a really highly ranked software, just remember that that software a lot of times is for people who are using thousands and thousands of lines for a project and managing hundreds and hundreds of people and time and resources. It's not for jump starters. So be smart about what templates you pick and make sure they're simple enough for you to use, that if you want to have certain features, go for those and try them out. But there's no wrong way if it works for you. So when people say something is the best, go for what's best for you. And then, of course, the thing I want you always to remember is you are the one managing, not the tools. Because remember, you can manage a moonshot from a napkin. Okay. And now we're ready for questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Judith. That was excellent. Great follow-up on the last one, and I'm really glad we got that all on record so we can share it out afterwards.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think also one of my new favorite terms you coined is Jumpstart junkies, which I will be using now for repeat borrowers. I think that's great. And yeah, all this before we get into any questions, if there are some, I just wanted to say thank you again. Your presentation is super relevant to what we're doing at Jumpstart, and I'm excited to be able to provide this resource to people who voice concerns about these exact things. You know, it's like every day people come to us with little issues they're having or problems, and these are direct solutions to that. So you know, thank you, and I'm sure everybody's very appreciative of it.
The bottom line is don't fight your tools. You know,
That's right.
find something that works and that you can use it, and
Yes,
that's the important thing.
I think that's great advice. Great advice. A couple questions. April says, any suggestions for use templates for Macs? I mean, Excel is yeah. Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, numbers, Excel is easily translated into like a Google Sheets. Like I think it's.
I'm going to correct you there.
All right.
The only problem, the reason why I didn't use Google Sheets, Google has not fixed something that's really annoying. Remember I showed you what I inserted in Excel and I indented? You can't indent in Google Sheets. So as long as you know that and you have another way to make dividing and subheadings, then definitely Google Sheets is great.
Yeah,
but
definitely something to be cautious of when you translate things. It could get wonky, but once you get something, stick with it, right? All right. And Morgan says Excel has some Gantt chart templates now. This version seems much simpler to use. So Judith, you're beating Excel at their own game, making that.
I didn't even know. I just make this stuff up. But again, Excel is, Excel is limited. It doesn't automatically move things over by dates unless you do some complicated formula work. But if your project is, if you don't mind putting in an hour or so a week to manage your schedule, it's so simple.
Yep. And Darnetta had a comment throughout and said, for stakeholders, you could also list board members, which is a great point.
Absolutely.
To all those other ones that Judith had listed. And then a couple people just asking about the slides and Word docs. We're going to send them out. Don't worry. As long as you registered, you'll get the email tomorrow with the follow-up information. All right. Any closing words before we get any last questions here?
The only thing you won't be able to use, by the way, is Derek has available the MS project sheet, but only those of you who have MS project loaded will be able to access it, but he will be able to give it to you. You might be able to get a free trial and try it out.
Yeah.
And I would say go for it, because then you'll understand the features you want to use.
Great. All right. Thank you so much, Judith. If you'll allow me a quick minute here just to close things up, we have a couple upcoming JUMPinars later this month and in July. The next one is actually next Wednesday at 7 p.m., another in-person one. This one will be on how to start a project without any money, which is a catchy title, and I'm sure a lot of people will be eager to hear Ryan Spack and Stan Smith's answers to that question. So mainly talking about creative deal making and how to structure projects where you might not be bringing in any capital or any financing, but you're helping out in other ways and being a different member of that team than you would with a Jumpstart loan. But that's going to be a great presentation in person from Stan Smith and Ryan Spack. Both of those are Jumpstart mentors who get paired with graduates of the Jumpstart Germantown training program. And they've also both completed countless development projects and have years and years of expertise that they'll be able to share with you on that. And then later next month in July, we have another Jumpstart think tank, which is sort of our networking / town hall Q&A session where we all gather and have pizza and drinks. And likewise, our Jumpstart mentors are there to field questions from the audience and really kind of have open dialogues about specific topics or specific issues that Jumpstarters are facing. So that's open to all, and I welcome you to RSVP for that on our website at jumpstartgermantown.com. Just head to the events page and you'll be able to sign up there. And
One last thing for me is that you will be getting a copy of my presentation. Derek will send it out, and the last slide has my email address if for some reason you have a question.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. And we will have the recording of this as well, along with all the materials at jumpstartgermantown.com/media. You can check out all our past JUMPinars as well, both the podcast versions, audio only, and the Zoom recordings. And we got a couple more chats here before we wrap up. Keith Brooks says, thank you, Keith. Always great to see your name in the attendees. Marquita says, is Microsoft project included with Microsoft Office Suite?
No.
No.
You gotta pay more.
Gotcha. Of course. I could have
guessed.
Okay, and Marquita let me know that the think tank is registration is closed, so I will open that up. Thank you for pointing that out. Must have been closed from the template. Sam asked, would Jumpstart consider recording the live events to share to those who cannot make it to the in-person event? That's definitely something we've talked about and considered. It's difficult and requires a lot of hours and technology to get a decent recording of in-person events, unfortunately. So we have, it's on our radar, and we're always brainstorming ways to provide the information in a recap afterwards. So some of our JUMPinars do have recaps on our Instagram. They're like 5 or 6 slides that have some key points about the information and a breakdown and stuff. And there's also some reels and recordings we have of Judith speaking at the in-person event, but they're really just a couple snippets and nothing huge. So we're working on it, and appreciate you making it to the virtual one. Hopefully there'll be a easy way to get them recorded in person as well. Aisha says, thank you. Tori, thank you. This was great. Glenn says, thanks for the great information. Sounds like people enjoyed it, Judith. So thank you very much.
I don't know how you can enjoy project management, but
you haven't met Jumpstarters then.
Oh, I did. We had a lot of fun a few weeks ago. I have a lot of admiration for what you guys do. And if, again, all of this is just to make you more successful and to make it easier for you to do something that's really hard, which is what Jumpstart is trying to help you be successful at, right?
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, thank you so much, and hope everybody has a good night. And I'll leave us on a good note of go Phillies, because they're in London this weekend. And I know
Respect
Judith,
the Brewers.
Judith, I know you're a Phillies fan, because during our JUMPinar, you kept on asking about the score. So I had
I know. Well, they just finished the 4:05 game right before we went on,
That's
and they
great.
swept the Brewers. They did a good job.
Great news. Got to keep everybody updated with the important stuff too. All right. Thanks, Judith. Bye, Janice. Have a good night. See ya.